And so those types of things, I think, just started to birth within me a gratitude just to be alive. Like, oh my goodness, I'm still here. That must mean that I have a purpose. Like there's something that I'm supposed to do with the life that I have left.
Welcome back to Conversation. I'm Emma.
And I'm Ginny. Today we interviewed Donna Wyland, who is the author of the book called A Guided Gratitude Journal. She's also a life coach.
Donna will share her personal journey and why gratitude is so important. Donna, welcome to the podcast. We're so happy to have you here with us today.
I'm very excited to talk with you about gratitude and about the books that God's given me to write on that topic.
So, Donna, you're an award winning author, a podcast host now, and a life coach and writing coach. And your book that we invited you here to talk about is called A Guided Gratitude Journal. So, tell our listeners a little bit about what that is.
Well, the journal is kind of an accompanying book, really, to the book that was produced right before it called Last Best Year, A Short Guide to a Grateful Life. And what that short gift book is kind of my own heart, sharing with people how I might do life differently if I knew I had a year to live. How would I want to change it? What kind of legacy would I like to leave behind? And I'm hopeful that it will give other people inspiration to maybe think about the same. And then I started to think that it would be so nice maybe to have something more personal or practical that people could read a short little personal story, an inspirational quote, and then be able to answer some questions about gratitude in their own lives and just kind of start to maybe cultivate that on a daily basis.
So the books do kind of go together, The Last Best Year and The Gratitude Journal.
They do. They definitely complement each other.
Me and Ginny were briefly talking this morning before you popped on, and I was sharing with her how it's easy for us to complain and forget to take a moment and be grateful. And then we have your book, and so I was flipping through it, and I was like, oh, I'm gonna need to get my hands on this like more afterwards because I haven't been able to really dive deep into that. But I love it. I love the idea having people kind of write and explore their minds rather than just reading something from someone.
Gratitude. Why is that important to you, Donna? Why has that become kind of a focus of your books?
You know, it's interesting because I started with children's books. And then the Lord just started to kind of stir in me this desire to write these nonfiction books about gratitude. And so I just kind of followed his lead. And this is what we came up with. But my life's been interesting, actually. I've had a lot of trauma, tragedy, just so many things. And I find as I share with people that they've had a lot too, it's amazing how many, so many of us have experienced just really, really difficult things. And as a child, my mother would always say that I looked at the world through rose-colored glasses. And my mother was very practical and very disciplined. And so it was not a compliment, let's just say, because I was, the second born kind of happy go lucky. No matter what happened, I would just say, oh, well, and I'd move on to the next thing. But I believe that God just kind of built within me this gratitude. For example, when I was 16, I was supposed to go to a school date. It was the Sadie Hawkins where the girls asked the guys. And my three best friends and I decided we were going to buck against the system. We were going as girls. It was girls' night out. And the day of the dance, one of my friends passed me a note in study hall, and the note said, "We don't want you to come anymore. We've invited Janice instead." And it broke my heart. And I was just so hurt. And I made it through the school day. I went home and I sulked and went to bed early. And about midnight that night, there was a loud knock on our door, and it was a policeman who was letting my parents know that there had been a bad accident. And all my friends were killed in that accident. And I would have been in that car. And
What?
so that was the first like huge tragedy of my life where I just naturally went to God. It's like I didn't get mad at God, but I went to him and said, "Why? And why am I still here? Why would you save me and pull me from that car?" And so those types of things, I think, just started to birth within me a gratitude just to be alive. Like, oh my goodness, I'm still here. That must mean that I have a purpose. Like there's something that I'm supposed to do with the life that I have left. And so at a young age, I already started to realize, how precious life was and how grateful I was, just to be here.
Did that gratitude follow with you, or were there other moments, of crisis that, you sorta had to renew it or go back to it?
Yeah, I have not always made the best of, in the past, relationship choices. And so I made a decision some years ago and married a person who was an abusive, not physically, but, psychologically and emotionally and everything. And so I spent 18 years trying to make that work. And through that time, there were many days that it was almost impossible, to be grateful. And there were sometimes it was so dark that I would just be sitting at home in the dark. And we had a landscape, a young man that would come and do the flowers and things at that time. And he would just walk in and out the door if he had to use the restroom or what have you. And I was sitting in the dark and he came walking through one day. And I think I scared him because there I was so depressed and just really struggling with the Lord. Like, how do I make this work? Can I do this just by myself? Can you make a marriage work by yourself? All these things. But I've always told people my journals read like the book of Lamentations. I've kept journals for 20 some years. And when things are the hardest is when I tend to write the most. And I'll start out with, oh Lord, what am I going to do? And this and that. And by the end of it, I'm praising God and I'm thanking Him for something. If it's just, thank you that I know you're here with me and I'm going to get through this. And I don't know what that looks like, but I know it's going to be okay. It makes me think of David in the book of Psalm and how he would, just pour out his heart to the Lord. And then by the end, he would be praising God. So there's just always something in me that I refuse to give up on God. I believe that He has a good plan no matter what I'm going through.
The first story that you shared, you kind of were able to see why you weren't invited or uninvited. And the second example that you gave, were you able to see why you had to fight for so long in that relationship? Do we not always get to see the why? And that's one question. And my other question is, do you think that your book will help people in similar situations?
You can take one at a time.
Yeah.
I know I'm trying to remember. Okay, now what was this and that?
Yeah.
Yeah, as far as the why, I don't know if there's a specific why, but I know that God always wants us to use our pain and what we've been through to help other people. So that's still kind of ruminating in me. I feel like He has a story there, um, a teaching or something that I'm supposed to share with other women who have been through that or who are going through that same thing so they can find hope in the midst of it. And honestly, I wouldn't have the relationship with Jesus I have if it wasn't for that. When my husband at the time would go to work every day, I just sat with the Lord. I would open my Bible and my cat would come and brawl across the Bible so I could only read half of it, the top half because she was laying over the bottom half. But I would just sit with him for hours and just read His word and pray and pour out my heart. And it's really given me the faith I have today. So I'm really grateful for that. And then you talked about the gratitude journal. Um, I believe I do have some short entries within the gratitude journal that share a little bit about that story. And I would hope that the questions that follow that would help women to begin to kind of process themselves. I did see Christian counselors, things like that. So I was really prayerful and also working with other people who helped me understand when it got to the point that it was affecting my health and everything. I was able to have, that sort of the confirmation that it was okay to move on.
So when you think about gratitude, it's kind of a big movement sort of in the culture. I see a lot of
Yeah.
shirts, right, saying I'm grateful or blessed, which I think
Yeah.
is positive for sure. Um, does gratitude actually shift something inside us, either emotionally or physically, in your experience?
It does. And, there are two different things of either um, feeling thankful or grateful, and then having it be your active will that's choosing gratitude. So if you're feeling thankful, usually that's because life is good and everything's great and you're super excited about something that's coming. But choosing gratitude, which is the biblical kind of thanksgiving and gratitude, is when we are able to look at anything, whether it's, good or challenging, and still being grateful and finding something, that we're thankful for in the midst of it. Robert Emmons, I've done some reading of his and I want to do more. He's considered the foremost expert on the topic of gratitude. And he is a PhD in California and has done scientific studies on gratitude and how it affects your mind, your spirit, your body. And so they have literally scientifically proven, yes, the act of being grateful, it can reduce pain. It obviously lifts our spirit, draws us closer to God. It changes the way we look at life, which is huge. Because if your perspective of life is negative, it can affect, how you act with people, how you react. So it's very powerful.
It's so interesting. I love when science or any other field of study sort of confirms what God has already taught us in the Bible, which when he says, in all things, give thanks, not necessarily for all things, the tragedy, but in all things, in it, that we know he's with us, that we know he's working for our good on some level that we may or may not know in this life. Also, I think that our stories are a blessing to people around us that we might not even realize.
Absolutely.
I've been thinking about. Well, how did you start just writing in general? Let's talk about your writing life a little bit. What prompted that?
Do you know, I just had a women's tea ask me to share my author journey, and it's so fun to share because I was actually a certified financial planner.
Wow.
And I was about 40 years old, and I was at a conference, and they had given us a break for the rest of the day. We were in Phoenix, and they said, go to the pool, take a hike, enjoy the rest of your time. So I took a bunch of magazines to the pool, financial planning magazines.
Well, that's
I was dedicated. And I was sitting there on my lounge chair with my magazines, and all at once, my first children's book in rough draft came to my brain. And I grabbed a pad of paper and I just started writing, 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 flipping the page, writing again. And that night, I showed my husband and I said, I have no idea what this is, but it just came to me when I was at the pool. And through the course of events and showing it to a Christian librarian and then having her share it with children at the school and just different things, the Lord took it, to a place where it was published and it started my new career as an author.
What's the name of that book?
That book is called Your Home in Heaven. And it's building on the fruit of the Spirit and taking those 9 fruit and equating them to a piece of an imaginary home in heaven.
Oh,
So the gift of love is a heart-shaped door, and self-control is a fence in your yard, and helping children really to understand that while Jesus is preparing their home in heaven, he's also preparing them for heaven. So they'll be ready when their house is ready.
that's awesome. I might have to get that for your baby.
You one of her nightly reads.
So after the children's books, and then you have told us a little bit about writing the adult books. The gratitude books are fairly new, is that right? What's been the
They are
response
too.
so far?
So far, I've been really excited because people read it and they become my best advertising. When I was at the Women's Tea a couple weeks ago to speak, the president stood up and she had read Last Best Year, but had not yet gotten the journal, but she bought it that day. And she just went on and on. "Oh my gosh, I have so much work to do." She said, "This just made me really think about how would I do life different? Like I want to be different. I want to forgive. I want to, be more grateful and this and that." And for probably 5 minutes, she told the ladies at the tea all about this book and how they needed to have it. So it's been a wonderful response.
Jenny, we were talking about how it might be a good gift for us to give to some of our friends and family, with the holidays coming up. If you're ever just kind of like, this person doesn't need anything, I think a book like this is a great option.
Even for a New Year's practice, I was thinking,
Yeah.
is it something that could be a whole year? I know people look for New Year's resolutions and that sort of thing.
Yeah, absolutely. It's about 200 pages long. And so there are the blank pages in the back to make a list today I'm grateful for. But you could certainly either, copy those pages and continue that in a 3-ring binder, however you'd want to do it.
I definitely want to do that. So let me talk to you a little about your work with women. I know a lot of your ministry is to women. You have a podcast now. It's called Free to Be. Is that right?
That's right. Yep.
I should say you were my writing coach for a while. You're a wonderful coach. And you kindly said to me one day, you might be wasting your money because you haven't written anything yet. So
Well, I'm not sure I said it quite like that, but
I'm still trying to write. But I love that name even then, Free to Be. So I'm wondering if there's a story behind that.
I can't remember a specific reason that that came to me, but if I looked in my journals, I was probably praying about something and probably asking God to show me what he wanted me to title it because I've had that free to be name for quite a long time, probably the last 12 years. But it was just kind of softly used in the background. It's only been in the last year or two that I've brought it to the forefront.
So what does that
So,
mean to you personally?
I was gonna say how I personally
yeah.
it is you're free to be anyone, like you're free to be you and you at 40 change your career. That's how I take it. Am I on the right track there?
That's absolutely right. You're free to be you, free to be authentically who God made you to be. And so that's why I started out with a number of blogs that were, free to be silly, free to be, whatever. I had all these different adjectives and things because I wanted women to really think about not being in a box. I think so many times as Christians, we have this idea that we can't do all these things because maybe it doesn't look holy enough or something like that. And we put ourselves in this little box and we miss so much joy because God's given us all these reasons to be who we are. And I think we can do that in a much larger framework than we tend to do. We're trying to be good Christian women, but in that process, I think sometimes we miss a lot and we can squash, the Holy Spirit. Does that make sense?
No, that does make sense. I mean, I think it's good to be in an environment to have friends and family close. I know Jenny does. You have all these ideas and we're like supporting you. But even with me, I'm like, even as I become a mom, I still have things that are important to me that I want to continue doing. Um, Obviously, a mom is, something so close to my heart. It's the number one, but I want to have other things. So I express that. I express that with my husband and say, well, I still want to, work part time and I'm still doing this and I still want to be able to do this and this and this. And he's just like, yeah, I mean, if that's what you want to do. And it's so nice to have someone who can see that. And if you want to change your career at any time, go for it. If that's what's on your heart, it's on your heart for a reason. And if you decide not to do it, just laugh it off. Like, remember that one time I wanted to run a marathon? That was really funny. I'm glad I never did that. But, if that's what they wanted to do at the time, support them.
Yes, exactly.
On the back of the gratitude journal, one of the things you have is forget competition. I think this is the one about the last year of your life, which I love that concept. If we thought I have 1 year left, what would I do differently? Wow, that's really powerful. So one of the things you put on there was forget competition. And that seems huge for women.
It is huge. It's huge for me. Every time I go to a writer's conference, I have to remind myself there are enough books in the world for everyone to write. If someone else gets a contract or an agent, it doesn't mean, that you're not going to do the same because, yeah, we just live in a world where there's so much competition, and where it's set up as there are winners and there are losers. But God doesn't look at it that way because He's created all of us with an abundance of talents and gifts. And there's plenty to go around for everyone to walk out those talents and gifts. So yeah, competition that's a really tough one. I struggled with that a lot.
I'd like to say I don't struggle with it and to say I'm blessed for not struggling with it. But then does it count if you struggle if you're comparing yourself with yourself? Like having certain expectations for yourself. And then if you don't meet them, you're hard on yourself for it. I feel like that's how I experience competition. It's not necessarily looking at like somebody else. It's like, oh wow, their life looks like this. I wish my life looked like this. It's more of, oh, I kind of expected at this time my life would look like this and it doesn't. Why? Or get discouraged. And I think that's kind of how I struggle with it.
Mhm.
I don't want anyone else's life. And I've been blessed to have the mindset, but I had this kind of expectation and goals and things for me. And, when life takes you in a different direction, you kind of look at that and be like, wait, I want to be over there.
That sounds healthy to me. Don't you think so?
I guess so. It can still be hard to kind of accept that God has a different plan than your plan, and He'll lead you where you need to be, and just trust that.
Yeah, I think letting God write our stories, right? We're doing a women's retreat tomorrow, actually, on the gift of your story. And you and I both, Donna, have been through divorce, which probably neither of us ever growing up as a Christian or a Christian home thought was even a possibility, right? But looking back, gosh, I mean, like you said, now you know that God is there with you in the hardest parts, right? So God was doing something there that I wouldn't trade now.
Absolutely. And I think if life was easy, people have always said this, right? If life was easy, we wouldn't know that we need God because we would just be going along and having fun, enjoying, loving, being loved, and we wouldn't realize how very much we need Him.
So tell us the happy, redemptive part of your story in the last few years since I've known you.
Well, it was actually, I can't believe it, almost 10 years ago that I met someone new. And it's kind of funny, actually. I have a girlfriend who met her husband on Match.com, and she is a strong Christian. And I thought, there is no way. That was like a one in a million chance. I am not doing that. But she strongly encouraged me. And she said, just go have coffee. You don't have to marry somebody. Famous last words. And so I did. I put up a profile, and my tagline was, I love Jesus, jeans, and country music. And all these men, because you could go in and see that who looked at your profile, and all these good looking men would look at my profile, but no one was. And so I went to the Lord and I said, oh God, is it country music? Do they not like country music? Or are you scaring them away? Like, what's going on?
Right.
So I said, forget it. I'm going to pick out a man. So I went to the men and I saw this handsome man in a cowboy hat. And I thought, oh my gosh, this might be the one. I read his profile. He wrote about Gary Chapman's book, The Five Love Languages. And he said, I have four sisters and three daughters. Believe me, I understand women and all this stuff. I thought, this guy sounds like he knows himself, like he knows women. So he and I meet after church one day for brunch at Whole Foods, and come to find out he's from Boston. He had the cowboy hat on because it was a country music festival. Oh gosh. And we dated 4 years before we even got engaged. Because I really wanted, we have four adult daughters. I really wanted their blessing. I wanted to know them. I wanted them to know me and have it be just a really positive and exciting thing for them too. So we've been married now for 5.5 years and building our family and blending, even though they all live in different states. But we're doing our best to really kind of bring them all into, the kingdom of God too, because we've got a couple that are straying out there, but God's at work.
Yes, for sure. Yes, John and I have been married 4.5 years, and we met on eHarmony. So I have to say it happened more than twice.
I love
Isn't that funny? And I thought about eHarmony, but then I went, "Oh, I'm not really looking for a husband. I just thought it'd be fun to meet a few guys and just kind of get out of the house, you know?"
You
So,
had a different plan.
yeah, but
Well,
it was funny because I just thought, "Oh my goodness, is it Jesus? Is it the jeans? Is it country music? Like, why doesn't anyone date me?"
My mom's been single for 25 years. Maybe I just feel like if I were
Mhm.
to tell her, you should go on a dating website, she would just, I don't even know how
that's
she
right.
would react. So I need to get, some people to encourage her, share their stories.
There you go.
That's
Yeah,
really
it's amazing, and I think God is so well, I mean, it's obviously God is so faithful because you just put it right up front, and then the men know exactly who you are and where you're coming from. So, praise God, the ones that didn't love him didn't contact me, so it was easy on my part. I didn't have to say no to anybody.
Right. Weed it out right from the beginning.
Right.
So, Donna, one of the themes of our podcast is life purpose. As we close, do you have any words of encouragement for listeners who might be saying, "Wow, she found her life purpose"? Maybe they've been thinking about something, but there's a fear of making a change or even taking a risk, trying to do something new. Um, do you have any thoughts for them?
Well, the first thing that comes to mind while you were asking the question was that so many people are actually walking out their purpose for this season and they don't even realize it because maybe it's not like a big thing. They're not a pastor, a teacher, a woman's leader, a corporate CEO. And so they feel like they haven't found their purpose. But maybe their purpose is to be the best mother that they can be. Maybe their purpose, is to be the best wife or to support a friend through a difficult time. Those are all really important purposes. And, it's interesting because God called me in such a powerful way that I just couldn't miss it. And everybody doesn't get that kind of a message necessarily. But I think that we know it, our soul knows it, and our spirit knows it. And our soul wants to keep pulling us toward what God wants us to do. And so I think if we're just sensitive to that and we just start taking the baby steps, if it's something that feels risky or scary, just do one little thing, whether it's contacting somebody or taking a class or, practicing a gift or an interest, a passion that you have, just maybe start to practice a little bit more because if God's going to use it, he's also going to refine it.
I like how you broke it down into so many different little things because I do the same. And I've mentioned it before, but we have so many purposes. If you minimize or make yourself little to think, what's my purpose? I mean, it is going to drive you crazy because you're trying to think of something so big and fulfilling, but it's not that. You are here for so many different reasons. Day by day, that alone is so fulfilling. And if you really think about it, I mean, how can you just be thankful? Because if you're thinking, oh, well, I didn't do much this, year or whatever, and you just think, well, what am I supposed to do with my life? And you're thinking of something so big, maybe something so big will never happen, but you had trillions of little things that you're ignoring.
I agree. And I think it's so interesting if people just would write on a piece of paper some of the good things that they have either experienced, shared, supported someone, accomplished, all of these little things. I think people would be very surprised at A, how it could lead them more toward their purpose, and B, how much they've really done throughout the year, and it might have felt small at the time, but you add it all up together and you look at that paper and go, "Oh my gosh, I've had an awesome year. Thank you, God. This is amazing." But we forget, right? We could have done something last week, and by this week, we've already forgotten it happened.
That's right. And maybe purpose today is simply to smile and say hi to someone that was having a bad day, or even to just
Yeah.
rest in God's presence, like you said, and read, right? So it's
Yes.
beautiful.
For our listeners, it could be listening to this podcast right now and then a guided gratitude journal book. And there you go. You're all set. See, I'll be your support system.
So, Donna, we'll put links on our show notes to the resources that you mentioned, the two gratitude books, as well as your author page. So getting back to our theme of gratitude, is there anything you'd like to leave our listeners with?
My last word would just be that I wish for everyone that they would wake up each day and A, thank God that they open their eyes and they're awake again. And B, I always say, Lord, let me be a blessing to someone today. And like you said, even if it's somebody at the grocery store, the gas station, just, let me bless somebody with my words, my smile, whatever it might be.
We're blessed to have you with us here today. So thank you so
Yeah.
much.
I loved it. You guys are so sweet. This was fun.
Thank you so much for joining us today.
If you enjoyed the show, please subscribe so you don't miss the next episode.
Tell others about the podcast.
And for more information on today's guest, check out our show notes.
Until next time.